Do you ever feel like you're running on fumes but can't explain why? What if the real reason behind your foggy mind isn't stress or screens, but something deeper inside your brain? And what if you could reignite your inner spark, not with medication, but with ancient wisdom and intentional habits? Welcome to Stoic Bridge, the bridge between ancient wisdom and modern life, guiding you through life's storms with calm and resilience. There's a silent war unfolding within most of us. It's not loud, it doesn't scream, but it's constant. A quiet battle we rarely name, not because it's invisible, but because we've grown used to it. Each morning begins with a weight we can't shake off. We drift through the day trapped in a mental haze, struggling to feel joy, motivation, or real connection. We point fingers at our routines, our jobs, our devices, even the weather. Yet beneath all these lies a deeper imbalance. Our brain chemistry is off. And at the heart of that imbalance is something most people overlook: dopamine. Often misunderstood as simply the pleasure chemical, dopamine is actually the engine of motivation. It's what gets you out of bed, helps you focus, push forward, and feel the satisfaction of progress. When your dopamine levels are healthy, the world feels more manageable. You breathe easier, your energy has purpose, and your emotions feel more grounded. But when those levels fall, even small tasks feel like mountains. And in our overstimulated, exhausted society, many of us are unknowingly running on empty. But here's the truth. You're not broken, and dopamine is not out of reach. You don't need prescriptions. You don't need to escape your life. What you need is a return to balance. There are natural, proven ways to rewire your mind, reawaken motivation, and rebuild the emotional foundation you've been missing. That's exactly what this video is about. We're diving into 10 powerful natural practices, not for perfection, but for reconnection. These habits are small, often ignored, but they hold the power to completely transform your emotional landscape. If you've been feeling stuck, dull, or like a stranger to yourself, this isn't the end. It's a new beginning. So let's begin, not in search of happiness, but in pursuit of presence, clarity, and the kind of strength that comes from within. Let's take the first step, together. Sometimes all it takes is one slow, mindful step, and suddenly the entire world feels different. Not because the scenery changes, but because you begin to shift. You step outside, stretch your limbs, feel the breeze brush your face, and something inside you gently stirs. The fog begins to clear. Your breath deepens. Your thoughts grow quieter, more focused. And for a fleeting moment, you reconnect with a version of yourself that had quietly slipped away. That sensation isn't imaginary. It's not just fresh air or clearing your head. What you're feeling is your brain chemistry coming back to life. Even light, unhurried movement, like a gentle walk, some light stretching, or simply rising from your seat, activates dopamine production. And dopamine isn't just about pleasure. It's the internal spark behind your motivation, your sense of joy, your emotional balance. It's the fuel that helps you engage with life instead of just surviving it. Yet, in our achievement-obsessed culture, we often reduce movement to numbers and metrics. 10,000 steps, 45-minute HIIT sessions, calories burned, goals reached. We push ourselves with pressure, turn fitness into performance, but your body doesn't need spectacle to heal. It doesn't need speed. It doesn't even need structure. What it truly needs is motion. Rhythmic, consistent, compassionate motion that allows breath, blood, and clarity to return. Strangely enough, when life weighs us down the most, when we're tired, anxious, sad, or emotionally frozen, movement is the first thing we abandon. We retreat inward. We sit, we scroll, we sleep. We try to think our way out of stagnation. But the truth is, no amount of thinking can replace the medicine of movement. The body speaks in rhythm, and when that rhythm is lost, so is emotional stability. The stillness becomes suffocating. And this isn't just New Age wellness talk, it's wisdom that stretches back millennia. Over 2,000 years ago, the Stoics deeply understood the connection between physical action and mental clarity. Take Cleanthes, for example, an early Stoic philosopher who earned his living hauling water at night while spending his days immersed in study. For him, manual labor wasn't separate from intellectual strength. It was the foundation. He knew that to keep his mind sharp, his body needed to move. That was his rhythm. That was his discipline. This ancient insight is surprisingly modern in application. Imagine this. You're drowning in work, your mind foggy, your chest tight with pressure. Your instinct might be to double down, to stay seated and push harder through the fatigue. But what if the breakthrough you need isn't more thought, but a 10-minute walk, a moment outside, a quiet reset, a breath of sunlight? That brief return to motion might shift your internal chemistry just enough to unlock clarity again. On a neurological level, this isn't speculation, it's science. Movement doesn't just increase dopamine, it also regulates serotonin, norepinephrine, and endorphins. These chemicals form the orchestra of your emotional well-being. They don't erase your problems, but they do change how you respond to them. You begin to face your day with more resilience, more grace, more inner alignment. And here's the most liberating part. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't need a personal trainer. You don't need a fitness tracker. You don't need to run or sweat or prove anything. You just need to begin, right here, right now. Stand up, roll your shoulders, stretch your arms to the ceiling, take a deep breath, walk barefoot through your living room with presence. If you're able, step outside. Let your skin feel the wind, your eyes meet the light, your senses return to the real world, not the pixelated one on your screen. Do it not because you're broken. Do it because your body was never designed for stillness stretched across days, weeks, or years. Movement is not punishment. It's permission. Permission to reconnect, permission to reset, permission to feel alive again in your own skin. A body in motion whispers truth. A mind in motion sees more clearly than a mind trapped in isolation. So ask yourself, not what the world expects from you, not what looks impressive online, but simply, what kind of movement does my body need today? What rhythm would soothe me? What action would unlock a little more breath, a little more life? Honor that answer, even if it's just a few steps, even if it's slow, especially if it's slow. Because in that simple, consistent movement, dopamine flows, and with it returns a quiet sense of grounded presence, a deeper connection to yourself that's been waiting patiently beneath the noise. Now that your body has remembered its rhythm, let's explore how the way you eat can help restore that same clarity and balance within your mind. Imagine this. It's late, you're alone in the kitchen, the day has been heavy, your mind tired. You open the fridge, not because you're hungry, but because something inside you feels empty. In that moment, food becomes more than fuel. It becomes a comfort, a distraction, a quick escape. A bite of something sweet or salty, creamy or crunchy, and for just a few minutes, the world seems quieter. The ache softens, the chaos fades. But what if that moment of comfort comes at a much deeper cost than we realize? Most of us reach for food not when our stomach growls, but when our soul does. When we're sad, bored, lonely, or overwhelmed, we often don't pause, breathe, or reflect. Instead, we reach for something to eat. Not because we're hungry, but because we're hurting. And here's the crucial truth. Every time we eat from emotion instead of intention, we're not just feeding our bodies, we're rewiring our brains. We're disrupting the balance of our most powerful mood-regulating chemicals, especially dopamine. Dopamine, the molecule behind motivation, focus, satisfaction, is deeply influenced by what we consume. The connection between nutrition and neurochemistry isn't just conceptual, it's chemical. What you eat directly affects how you think, how clearly you focus, how deeply you feel, and how resilient or reactive you become. Protein-rich foods, healthy fats, and nutrients like tyrosine are the raw materials your brain uses to create dopamine. They are, quite literally, the building blocks of your inner fire. But when we trade these essentials for sugar-laden snacks, processed comfort food, or emotional binge eating, we rob our brains of the fuel they need. Sure, that treat might lift your mood for 10 minutes, but what about the rest of the day? More often than not, we crash harder. We feel foggier, less motivated, emotionally unstable. The short-term relief quietly steals our long-term balance. The Stoics, of course, never used words like dopamine or neurotransmitters, but their insights were timeless. They understood that discipline in what we consume leads to clarity in how we live. Seneca famously said, "Drunkenness is nothing but voluntary madness." He wasn't just talking about alcohol. He was cautioning against any form of overindulgence that clouds the mind and weakens our will. And in today's world, food has become one of the most socially accepted and least questioned forms of emotional escape. So the real question isn't, what should I eat to lose weight? Or what's the trendiest diet right now? Instead, it should be, what kind of food helps me feel clear, steady, and strong? That's not about guilt. It's about awareness. It's about observation. How does your body feel after you eat? How does your mind feel 2 hours later? Did that meal anchor you? Or did it leave you drifting? Let's take this even deeper. Imagine starting your day with real nourishment. Maybe eggs, leafy greens, whole grains, and plenty of water. Before you've even checked your phone or faced the outside world, you've already sent your brain a message. I choose stability over stimulation. You've built dopamine the natural way, through intention, not intensity. And as a result, you move through your morning with more clarity, fewer cravings, and emotional balance that lasts. Now contrast that with a rushed, skipped breakfast or late-night overeating driven by stress. You wake up groggy, unmotivated, drained. By mid-morning, your blood sugar crashes and you're desperately chasing dopamine through external means. Scrolling, snacking, snapping. But it's not because you're weak. It's because your brain is trying to compensate for what your body was never given. Eating with wisdom is one of the most powerful acts of self-respect. Not clean eating, not restriction, wisdom. That quiet strength that says, this is how I want to feel, so this is what I'll put into my body. That's not a diet. That's identity. That's self-mastery in action. And yes, it takes effort. It takes self-awareness to pause and ask, am I actually hungry or am I avoiding something? It takes courage to walk away from the quick fix, the comfort snack, the easy out. But every time you choose nourishment over numbing, you're training your emotional core to stabilize itself. You're telling your nervous system, I don't need to run. I can sit, I can feel, I can respond, not just react. Because food is not just fuel. It's information. Every bite you take is a message to your cells, your energy, your emotional state. And when you build your meals with care and clarity, you're not just feeding your present self, you're shaping your future self. One meal at a time. So the next time you open the fridge in a moment of stress, breathe. Ask yourself, what do I actually need right now? Maybe it's fuel, maybe it's rest, maybe it's connection, or simply a moment of silence. Don't just feed your feelings, feed your future, because what you consume becomes how you live. And if you want to feel steady, sharp, and strong, your food has to reflect that choice. Now that we've refueled your body and brain with wisdom, let's explore one of the most overlooked sources of clarity, deep, intentional rest. Think of sleep not as the end of your day, but as a sacred return, a quiet journey back to yourself. Not the kind of sleep where you collapse on the couch with the TV still buzzing, but real rest, the kind that holds you, heals you, and hands you back to the world more whole than before. When was the last time you truly gave yourself that kind of rest? Not just shutting your eyes, but actually giving your mind and body full permission to reset. In our hyper-driven world, rest has become a forgotten ritual. We're taught to worship hustle, celebrate exhaustion, and treat sleep like a weakness to overcome. We reward all-nighters, glorify caffeine, and fill every empty hour with noise, screens, and endless stimulation. We act like we can push through it all, as if rest were optional, as if our nervous systems weren't whispering warnings with every yawn, every brain fog, every sharp breath of stress. But here's the unfiltered truth. Sleep is not a luxury. It's a biological non-negotiable. And when you skip it, rush it, or treat it like an afterthought, your mind begins to crumble from the inside. Especially when it comes to dopamine, the very fuel for your focus, motivation, and emotional stability. During sleep, your brain doesn't just rest, it repairs. It performs a deep kind of internal housekeeping. It flushes out toxins. It resets your hormonal systems. It restores neurotransmitters like dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine, chemical messengers that shape how you think and feel the entire next day. When sleep is shallow or missing, your dopamine receptors become dull. You stop feeling rewarded by effort. You lose motivation. Life feels gray, heavy, harder than it needs to be. Have you ever noticed how everything feels louder after a restless night? Minor problems suddenly feel massive. Your patience thins, your willpower fades. You snap at others or spiral inward. That's not just being tired. That's your brain running on an empty tank, trying to function with a drained battery and flickering signal. You can't solve anything well in that state. Not with calm, not with clarity. The Stoics, though they lacked sleep research, understood this deeply. Marcus Aurelius, despite his immense responsibilities as emperor, reminded himself daily to do the work of a human being. But even he acknowledged the importance of rest. Because preparation isn't only mental, it's physical. And rest is preparation. It's what allows you to meet the world not as a scattered mess of reactions, but as a clear, composed, centered force. Without sleep, your philosophy is just theory. With sleep, it becomes practice. And yet, how many nights do we throw away for false productivity? We stay up late checking just one more email, scrolling through other people's lives, numbing out with noise. We tell ourselves we're getting more done. But in truth, we're stealing from tomorrow, taking from our future clarity, creativity, and emotional resilience. One of the most powerful choices you can make for your mental and emotional well-being is not to hustle harder, it's to sleep better. And this doesn't mean aiming for perfect sleep every night. Life is messy. But you can build a rhythm, a sacred boundary that says, this time is mine, this is when I reboot my soul. Start with something simple. Dim the lights, turn off the screens, let your mind unwind instead of ramping up. Create a small space of stillness between your day and your dreams, a space where you shift from doing to simply being. It won't always be easy. You'll feel the pull to check one more message, complete one more task. But remember this, a tired mind doesn't think. It complains. It doesn't solve problems. It creates them. So protect your nights like your future depends on it, because it does. Make your bedroom a sanctuary. Cool, dark, quiet, no judgment, no overstimulation, just a space where healing can happen without effort. And if sleep doesn't come easily for you, begin with small steps. Commit to a consistent bedtime. Turn off screens an hour before bed. Try calming sounds, gentle stretches, or slow breathing. Not to chase perfection, but to honor your mind's most basic need, to rest and reset. Now ask yourself a question that might shift everything. What would change in my life if I treated sleep as seriously as I treat my goals? Because every night you respect your rest, you're not being lazy. You're laying the foundation for focus, energy, emotional balance, and resilience. No morning routine, no supplement, no productivity hack can replace that. You can't outrun fatigue, but you can outsmart it by making sleep a daily ritual of self-respect. So close your eyes tonight, not as an escape, but as a return to presence, to peace, to power. And as your body begins to recharge, we'll now turn inward toward a form of stillness that doesn't happen in sleep, but in silence. Imagine sitting beside a quiet lake in the early morning. No phone, no noise, just your breath, your thoughts, and the stillness wrapping gently around you. When was the last time you allowed yourself that kind of space? Not to think, plan, scroll, or solve anything, but simply to be. In today's world, such moments are rare. We live in a culture of constant motion. Our days are filled with to-do lists, background music, breaking news, pinging notifications, and endless digital noise. We've trained ourselves to fill every gap with input. Something to watch, something to read, something to do. But in all that busyness, we lose connection to the one thing we need most, ourselves. We've become strangers to stillness. And yet, it's in that stillness, not in the noise, where real healing begins. Where dopamine doesn't spike from stimulation, but gently rises through presence. Where your nervous system, battered by stress and urgency, finally begins to settle. And where your mind, fractured by distraction, starts to come home. The Stoics understood this long before smartphones ever existed. They taught that the mind must not only be trained to think, but to sit, to endure silence, to face itself without flinching. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." That wasn't poetic fluff, it was instruction. A reminder that retreating inward isn't an escape from life. It's a return to it, with deeper awareness and greater presence. From a scientific lens, we now know that practices like meditation and mindfulness directly increase dopamine and serotonin levels, improve emotional regulation, and rewire the brain for clarity and calm. But even more powerful than the chemistry is the experience. The moment you sit in silence, something sacred begins to happen. You step out of reactivity, you stop running, you allow emotion not to be pushed away, but to rise, breathe, and eventually soften. You begin to witness your thoughts rather than being pulled around by them. You create space between the feeling and the reaction, between the impulse and the choice, and in that space, transformation quietly waits. Let's make this real. Imagine you're overwhelmed. Your day has been chaotic, your heart is tight, your mind is racing. Normally you might grab your phone, text someone, reach for a snack, or scroll for an hour hoping to feel something different. But this time, you stop, you sit, you close your eyes, you breathe, you ask, what am I actually feeling right now? You don't analyze, you don't judge, you simply listen. And as you sit there, the noise begins to loosen its grip. The emotion that felt overwhelming a moment ago now feels softer. Not gone, but manageable. The part of your brain responsible for reward, focus, and motivation, your dopamine system, begins to activate not because of an external reward, but because you've chosen to be present with yourself. This is why people who practice meditation regularly often report feeling more centered, motivated, and emotionally steady. Not because they're avoiding reality, but because they're facing it with a grounded, inner stillness. And stillness doesn't require incense or hours on a cushion. It can be 5 minutes alone with a warm cup of tea, 10 minutes in the morning before the world wakes up. A mindful walk with no phone, just your breath and the sound of your steps. The form doesn't matter, the intention does. You're not performing stillness. You're returning to yourself. You're remembering the part of you that exists beneath the noise, beneath the roles, the responsibilities, the scrolling, that quiet self that's always been there, waiting. So ask yourself this: what would happen if I gave myself 5 minutes of undistracted silence every day? Would clarity emerge? Would buried emotions rise? Would long ignored truths finally have a voice? Maybe, and that's okay. Stillness doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it stirs up discomfort, grief, or truth we've avoided. But it always brings honesty. And truth is the beginning of healing. Truth is the path to growth, to resilience, to emotional freedom. You don't need to live in a monastery to find this peace. You just need to be willing to pause, willing to sit, willing to listen to the voice beneath the chaos. Because only in silence do we finally hear our own. And sometimes that voice, once heard, is all we need to find our way forward again. Now that we've reconnected with our inner stillness, let's reignite momentum. By exploring how setting small goals and celebrating tiny wins can reshape our brain and rebuild our motivation from the inside out. There's a quiet kind of joy that comes from checking something off your list, even if it's small. Drinking a glass of water, sending that one email, finishing the paragraph you've been avoiding. It's not about the size of the task, it's about the signal, a message to your brain that says, I'm moving forward. And that tiny burst of satisfaction you feel, that's dopamine at work. We often think dopamine only kicks in after we achieve something grand, landing the dream job, publishing the book, losing the weight. But dopamine doesn't wait for the finish line. It thrives on progress. It lights up in response to movement, no matter how small, as long as that movement tells your brain, I'm no longer stuck. This is where many of us fall to a trap. We wait too long to feel proud. We delay celebration until we've crossed some massive milestone, and in doing so, we deprive ourselves of the very reward system that could help us keep going. We rob our brains of momentum. We build a habit of delay, of withholding joy, and wonder why we lose motivation halfway through. But here's the truth. You can create momentum today with something as simple as one honest step forward. And the Stoics, though they weren't chasing success in the modern sense, understood the value of direction. Epictetus said it best: first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. Not fantasy, not perfection, just clear intention, followed by deliberate, consistent action. Let's make this practical. Say your goal is to improve your health, write a novel, change careers, or build emotional strength. If you only allow yourself to feel proud when you've fully arrived, you'll burn out before you get there. Your brain will constantly feel deprived, like it's climbing a mountain with no rest stops and no view. But if you break that big goal into small, tangible actions, drink a glass of water, write 100 words, take one deep breath instead of reacting, and then celebrate each of those wins with awareness, you build momentum. You train your brain to associate effort with reward. And that's not just philosophy, it's neuroscience. Studies show that recognizing and celebrating small victories reinforces the brain's reward circuitry. It literally strengthens the neural pathways that keep you going. This is how we rewire ourselves to enjoy the process, not just the result. Think about how we treat children learning to walk. We cheer for every step. Every wobble is met with encouragement. Why do we stop doing that for ourselves? Somewhere along the way, we decided that only perfection deserves praise. But the truth is, you don't build a meaningful life overnight. You build it one quiet, intentional decision at a time. Each decision becomes a brick in the foundation of who you're becoming. So make it a practice. Set goals, but keep them real, attainable, human. Then track your progress, not for public applause, but for your own psychology. Keep a small notebook or write one sentence in your phone each evening, even a quiet smile to yourself at the end of the day that says, "I showed up today, I moved forward." That's not weakness, that's wisdom. That's dopamine being used intentionally as a tool, not a trick. And here's something people underestimate: the emotional impact of this process. Every time you recognize a small win, you give your nervous system a sense of hope. You prove to yourself that change is not just possible, it's already happening. You turn vague frustration into direction, and little by little your self-image shifts. You stop seeing yourself as stuck. You start seeing yourself as someone who shows up, even when it's hard. Someone who keeps promises to themselves, even when no one else is watching. So take a moment now. Ask yourself, what is one small thing I can do today that moves me closer to the person I want to become? Then, do it. And when it's done, pause. Don't scroll past it. Don't brush it off. Acknowledge it with presence, with quiet pride, not with fireworks, but with something even stronger, the inner voice that says, "I did what I said I would do." Because the person who celebrates one honest, quiet step, day after day, will one day reach the summit. Not because they rushed, but because they never stopped walking. Now that we've reignited motivation through intentional action, let's explore another powerful source of emotional energy: the profound impact of music on your mind and dopamine levels. Have you ever felt your entire emotional landscape shift because of a single song? One moment you're drained, heavy, scattered, stuck. Then a familiar melody starts playing, and suddenly something stirs. You sit up straighter, your chest opens, your eyes blur, not with sadness, but with recognition. That's not magic, that's dopamine. And music, in its purest form, is one of the fastest, most powerful ways to awaken it. Music doesn't just entertain, it moves us, literally. Neuroscience confirms that when we listen to music we truly enjoy, the brain's reward system lights up. Dopamine surges, mood lifts, energy returns, and often clarity emerges. Not because the world changed, but because we shifted from the inside. It's why a song from 10 years ago can take you back to a moment you thought you'd forgotten. It's why a simple melody can bring tears, not out of pain, but out of deep emotional recognition. Because music speaks in a language deeper than thought. It reaches parts of us that words simply cannot. And here's the beautiful part: music is accessible. It's immediate. It's intimate. You don't need therapy or a journal or a perfect plan. You just need sound, carefully chosen, deeply felt. A song that resonates like a mirror, or like a hand reaching out when you didn't even know you needed one. While the Stoics didn't center music in their philosophy, the idea of harmony, of rhythm, of aligning your internal world with something greater was absolutely present. Seneca in particular wrote about rhythm and emotional discipline. And what is music, if not rhythm personified? A bridge between chaos and calm, between who you are now and who you remember yourself to be. Let's bring this into the real world. You're stuck, foggy, unmotivated, your thoughts won't land, your body won't move, and your focus feels miles away. Your first impulse might be to caffeinate, scroll, or push through the resistance. But what if instead you paused, closed your eyes, and put on a piece of music that means something to you? Not background noise, not a trending playlist, but a song that speaks your emotional language. One that slows your breath, shifts your posture, softens your jaw. One that lands somewhere deep in your body and says, "I know this place. I know this feeling." You're not alone. This isn't escapism. It's recalibration. Different types of music serve different states. Uplifting tracks can elevate your energy and ignite motivation. Calming melodies can ease anxiety and bring you back into your body. Instrumental or classical music can sharpen your focus and stimulate creative flow without overwhelming your mind. And sometimes sad music is exactly what you need, not to deepen the pain, but to let it breathe, to let it pass through. But here's the key: intentionality. Don't consume music like background noise. Curate your emotional environment. Choose music the way you would choose a close companion, based on trust, connection, and resonance. Build playlists that support your different needs: morning clarity, midday reflection, focused work, emotional reset, gentle unwinding. Let these be yours. Not what's popular, not what's algorithm approved, but what touches you. Because often, motivation doesn't come from logic or planning. It comes from a song that reaches into the dustier corners of your soul and whispers, "Wake up, you're still here, you're still alive." And in that moment, you remember, you return. Music is not just entertainment, it's alignment. It's a tuning fork for the soul, a frequency that brings your body and mind back into harmony. And emotionally, this changes everything. You begin to understand that you don't always need to fix how you feel. Sometimes you just need to feel it fully, deeply, honestly, and let it move through you. Music gives you that space, that release, that emotional permission. So ask yourself, what's the soundtrack to the version of me I'm becoming? What song lights a fire you forgot you had? What music makes you feel strong or tender or whole? Play it, feel it, let it do its quiet, steady work. Because what you cannot yet say in words, music can carry. And in that melody, you just might find your next step forward. Now that we've explored the emotional power of sound, let's look outward, toward the people around us. Because the company you keep can either drain your dopamine or help you rise with it. There's a certain kind of conversation that feels like sunlight through clouds. You walk away feeling lighter, understood, more like yourself. And then there are the other kinds, the ones that leave you drained, tense, or questioning your worth. That contrast, it's not just emotional, it's chemical. Because every relationship you engage in is shaping your brain. Human connection isn't a bonus feature in life. It's a biological necessity. The people you let into your world influence your dopamine levels, your emotional resilience, your motivation, and even your sense of identity. Every interaction is input, and over time, your mind becomes what it's most consistently exposed to. We often underestimate this truth. We think we're choosing friends, colleagues, or companions, but really we're choosing the emotional chemistry of our daily experience. And while shallow, surface-level interactions, endless texting, small talk, or attention chasing may keep us occupied, they don't nourish us, they don't heal, they don't elevate. What your nervous system craves, what your soul craves, is authentic presence. The kind of connection that requires no performance. Being with someone who listens, not just waits to speak. Someone who sees beyond your role, your job title, your momentary struggle, and gently reminds you of who you already are. The Stoics spoke often about friendship, but not the transactional kind, not the convenient or opportunistic kind. Seneca wrote, "One of the most beautiful qualities of true friendship is to understand and to be understood." That kind of bond, it's not flashy, it's not loud, but it is life-giving. It strengthens your inner world, it calms your nervous system, it returns you to yourself. Now contrast that with toxic or draining relationships, the kind where you feel anxious, small, or chronically unseen. Your brain interprets those dynamics as threat. Your body tightens, your energy becomes reactive, your thoughts scatter. Over time, without even realizing it, you begin to shrink. You question your worth. You live more in survival mode than in peace. And here's the truth. You don't need a crowd to be healthy. In fact, sometimes the crowd is the very thing keeping you disconnected. What matters most is quality, not quantity. One or two people who energize you, challenge you with kindness, and make you laugh from the heart. That's more powerful than 50 hollow connections, because each relationship is either medicine or noise. It either lifts you or clouds you. So let's get practical. Start noticing how you feel after every interaction. Are you energized or depleted, centered or scattered, clear or confused? That's not just mood, that's biology. And the more you learn to honor those internal signals, the more you begin to curate an emotional environment that supports your well-being instead of sabotaging it. But don't stop there. Be that nourishing presence for others too. Show up without performing. Listen without needing to fix. Celebrate without comparison. Bring the kind of energy you wish someone would bring into your life. Because connection is a mirror, and when you become that safe, grounding space for another, you create the conditions for reciprocity. For relationships built on mutual growth, not drama or dependency. And if lately you've been feeling heavy, numb, or unmotivated, don't just look inward. Look around. Who's in your space? Who do you allow access to your thoughts, your energy, your time? Do they deserve that access? This isn't about judging others. It's about protecting your peace. Because your environment, both internal and external, is the architecture of your mental and emotional life. You can't build clarity in chaos. You can't restore dopamine in dysfunction. Sometimes the most powerful step toward a healthier, more motivated mind isn't to work harder or think deeper. It's simply to walk with better people, to seek out those who remind you of your strength, who call you into honesty, not ego, who lift you just by being themselves. So ask yourself today, who lifts me without effort? Who makes me feel more like myself, not less? Who am I becoming by the company I keep? Because in the end, a true friend doesn't exhaust you. They don't drain you. They restore you. And that kind of connection, it's not a luxury. It's not optional. It's medicine for your mind, your body, and your soul. Now that we've reconnected with the healing power of relationships, let's step outside and explore how even the simplest touch of sunlight can reset your mood, your chemistry, and your sense of presence. When was the last time you stepped outside, not to go somewhere, not to check something off your list, but simply to feel the sunlight on your face? No destination, no goal, just you, the breeze, and the light. In the modern world, this kind of moment feels almost foreign. We've grown so used to artificial spaces, fluorescent lights, climate-controlled rooms, filtered air, glowing screens, that we've forgotten something ancient and essential. We were not designed for indoor living. We are not just minds and muscles. We are biology. We are chemistry. And sunlight, simple, natural sunlight, is not just a pleasant warmth. It's a biological signal, a reset button for your entire system. Here's what science tells us. Sunlight increases the production of vitamin D, which is critical for regulating mood, immunity, and sleep. But even more important for your emotional state, exposure to sunlight, especially in the morning, boosts dopamine levels in the areas of your brain responsible for motivation, energy, and focus. This isn't spiritual fluff. This is neuroscience. Your brain has been waiting for light, and while the Stoics may not have known about UV rays or neurotransmitters, they deeply understood the healing power of nature. Marcus Aurelius wrote and reflected beneath the stars. Seneca found clarity in the mountains and rivers. For them, nature wasn't as an escape from life. It was life. To think clearly, they believed you had to return to what is natural, to align with the rhythms of the earth, not the chaos of the marketplace or the pressure of performance. But most of us have lost that rhythm. We sleep through sunrise. We live behind curtains. We spend our best hours under artificial lights, seated in front of blue glowing rectangles. And then we wonder, why do I feel off? Why am I tired, irritated, foggy? It's not personal failure. It's circadian misalignment. Your nervous system was built to respond to sunlight. The rising sun is nature's signal to your internal clock. Wake up, recalibrate, align. Ignore that signal, and your dopamine levels suffer. Your mood dips, your willpower weakens, your sleep cycle derails. But the solution is as simple as it is powerful. Step outside, even if just for 5 minutes. Even if the sky is overcast, even if your schedule is packed. Walk to the balcony, sit by the window. Let your eyes, not hidden behind sunglasses, absorb natural light. Let your skin feel the air. Let your breath slow down, and do it without your phone, without notifications, without trying to be productive. Just stand, just walk, just be. This is not about sunbathing or turning nature into another life hack. It's about remembering that you belong to the real world, not just the digital one. You belong to the wind and the leaves, to the warmth and the shadows, to the rhythm of life that no algorithm can replicate. Because the world, the real world, has its own kind of medicine. The sound of birds, the glow of morning light, the stillness of a tree. These are not distractions. They are resets. And when you make this a daily rhythm, even in small doses, your mind begins to thank you. Your mood stabilizes. Your anxiety lessens, your sleep becomes deeper, your thoughts feel wider, less cramped. You start noticing beauty again, details you used to rush past. And slowly, dopamine begins to flow, not from achievement, but from alignment, not from chasing, but from being. So ask yourself this: when was the last time I let the sun touch my skin? Without distraction, without agenda. What would shift in my day, in my chemistry, in my mindset, if the first thing I reached for each morning wasn't a screen, but the sky? Because sometimes what no book can teach, what no routine can fix, what no supplement can restore, the morning light can. Now that we've reconnected with the natural rhythms of light and presence, let's turn inward again to rediscover the forgotten joys that reignite our inner spark. Doing what you love, not just what's expected. When did joy become something you had to earn? When did doing what lights you up turn into something that had to be scheduled, explained, or delayed until everything else was done? Somewhere along the path to adulthood, many of us made a quiet, unspoken trade. We exchanged what made us feel alive for what made us feel responsible. And in that trade, we lost something essential, not just a hobby or a pastime, but a deep biological connection to our own inner spark. Doing what you love isn't just about pleasure, it's about dopamine. It's about reactivating the natural, sustainable flow of motivation and emotional clarity that comes not from checking off a task, but from fully engaging in something that speaks to your soul. Think about it. Those activities that immerse you completely, where time bends and hours pass like minutes. It could be painting, writing, cooking, gardening, playing music, crafting, running, reading, building something with your hands, or simply sitting under a tree with no agenda. Whatever it is, when you're doing it, you're not thinking about being productive. You're just present. And in that presence, dopamine flows. Not in a spike and crash kind of way, but in a sustained, nourishing way that strengthens your focus, your joy, and your emotional resilience. The Stoics deeply understood this. While they emphasized duty and discipline, they also believed in eudaimonia, the flourishing of the soul. For them, a well-lived life was not just about virtue, it was also about fulfillment. They didn't divide purpose from joy. They believed that to live in alignment with your nature, to do what you're made for, was to live with clarity, peace, and yes, even pleasure. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." So here's the question. How often do your thoughts turn toward what truly moves you? What color are you painting your days with? Let's ground this in something real. Think back to a time when you were completely absorbed in something you loved. Your mind was focused, your heart was light, your body was calm but energized. You weren't forcing anything. You weren't chasing an outcome. You were simply being. That's what true engagement does. It creates clarity without caffeine, energy without strain, focus without pressure. But too often, we abandon these soul-nourishing activities. We say we don't have time. We convince ourselves that joy must wait until after the work is done, that it's indulgent, that it's not productive. But here's the truth. If you don't make space for what fuels you, you'll burn out doing what drains you. There is no virtue in self-abandonment. There is no wisdom in a life built entirely around obligation. This doesn't mean quitting your job or walking away from responsibilities. It means reclaiming the part of you that was never meant to die. Your curiosity, your wonder, your creative fire. Because when you water that part of yourself, everything else begins to shift. Your mood lifts, your energy returns, your resilience strengthens, and dopamine begins to flow not from external approval, but from inner alignment. So start small. Give yourself 15 minutes a day. Yes, only 15 minutes to do something that brings you joy. Protect that time like it matters, because it does. Let yourself enjoy without justifying. Let yourself create without perfecting. Let yourself remember who you were before the world told you what you had to become. This isn't about escaping life. It's about reconnecting to the part of you that gives life its meaning. So ask yourself, what did I once love that I've slowly forgotten? What simple act of joy can I return to today? Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for more time to magically appear. Make time. Not because it's urgent, but because it's essential. Because happiness isn't a goal you reach at the end of the to-do list. It's a practice, a rhythm, a remembering. And it begins not with what's expected of you, but with what awakens you. And now, as we return to the heart of emotional balance, let's explore one final, but often neglected, key to true inner peace. Not resisting stress, but learning how to release it. How much energy have you spent just holding it all together, forcing a smile when your chest feels heavy, showing up for everyone else while your own thoughts quietly plead for rest, telling yourself to be strong while your body whispers, please, just pause. We live in a world that glorifies resilience, but so often it misunderstands it. True resilience is not about pushing through stress until you collapse. It's not about ignoring your limits or wearing suffering as a badge of honor. Real strength lies in knowing when and how to let go. To release stress, not just resist it, because the more you resist, the more it builds. And stress, especially when chronic, becomes one of the most dangerous thieves of emotional clarity and mental health. It slowly drains your nervous system, it clutters your thinking, and it blocks the natural flow of dopamine, the very chemical that keeps you motivated, hopeful, and alive. Over time, stress rewires your brain. You begin to expect pressure. You fear rest. You start to associate stillness with weakness. You think if you're not fighting, you're failing. But you're not failing. You're just tired. And your exhaustion isn't a character flaw, it's a signal. The Stoics understood this deeply. They knew that while we can't always control what life brings us, we can absolutely control how we respond. Epictetus wrote, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And that doesn't mean ignoring how you feel. It means giving yourself space to feel it wisely, gently, and intentionally. To stop pretending you're fine. To stop bottling everything up and calling it strength. Because here's what happens when you don't release stress. It stays. It settles into your shoulders, your neck, your chest. It shows up as anxiety, fatigue, irritability, brain fog. It leaks into your relationships, your habits, your inner voice. It becomes burnout. But here's the beautiful truth. Stress is energy, and energy can be moved. It doesn't need to be buried. It needs to be released. So what does release look like? Sometimes it's physical. A long walk, a deep stretch, breath work, a cold shower, or dancing in your room when no one's watching. Sometimes it's emotional, crying without judgment, journaling without editing, or talking to someone who doesn't try to fix you, just sees you. Sometimes it's spiritual, stillness, prayer, gratitude, sitting in quiet with your hand on your heart and simply breathing. The form doesn't matter, the intention does. What you're telling your nervous system is this: I'm allowed to feel this. I'm safe to release this. I'm not defined by this. And here's the paradox. The moment you stop resisting stress, the moment you allow it to rise and pass like a wave, you return to yourself. Your thoughts become clearer, your motivation returns, your emotional capacity expands, and dopamine, freed from survival mode, begins to flow again. Not because your life is perfect, but because you're no longer at war with your own experience. Make this a practice, a quiet daily ritual. 5 minutes. Put your hand on your chest, name what you're carrying, and then exhale. Not all at once, but slowly. Bit by bit, teach your body the safety of release, because when the body rests, the heart breathes, and when the heart breathes, the mind speaks with clarity. So ask yourself, where am I carrying stress that no longer belongs to me? What would it feel like to let it go? Don't wait for a breakdown. Don't wait for everything to fall apart. Choose the wisdom of release now, because peace is not something you earn after the work is done. It is part of the work. And the more you release, the more you rise. Your brain is not broken. Your soul is not lazy. You are not unmotivated. You are simply exhausted from chasing balance in a world that never taught you how to find it. But here's the deeper truth. Everything you need to heal, to feel alive again, to think clearly, to breathe deeply, to move with strength, it's already inside you. And dopamine, that small but mighty chemical, it's not the goal, it's the messenger. It responds not to noise or perfection, but to consistency, to intention, to the quiet, small acts of self-respect you choose each day. You don't need a total transformation. You don't need to fix your whole life overnight. You just need to return to movement, to nourishment, to stillness, to sunlight, to joy, to connection, to rest, to the daily decisions that tell your body, I am here, I am healing, I am ready to feel again. The Stoics never ran after happiness. They pursued clarity with quiet conviction. They didn't numb their emotions to survive the storms. They trained their minds to stand still in the middle of them, to respond, not react, to see life for what it is and act with calm intention. That same clarity they practiced, it isn't locked in a book or lost to the past. It's right here, in you. It lives in your breath, in your body, in the way you choose your next step after this episode ends. So don't wait for motivation to find you. Build it. Don't wait to feel better before you start. Create the space where healing can begin. You have more strength than you think. And dopamine, it's not the destination, it's the signal. A gentle whisper from your nervous system telling you whether you're aligned with your values or slipping off course. Start with the smallest step. Repeat it with care. Let consistency become your compass. Because mental and emotional well-being isn't about intensity. It's about returning again and again to the basics that build you from the inside out. Now, before we close, let's gently revisit what we explored today. You learned how to boost your dopamine and renew your inner energy by moving your body with purpose, fueling yourself with nourishing food, practicing deep presence and mindful stillness, setting goals and celebrating even the smallest wins. Letting music move and heal you. Surrounding yourself with relationships that restore. Stepping into natural light. Returning to what you love. And most importantly, releasing stress instead of resisting it. Each practice was not a hack, but a doorway back to yourself. A reminder that your mind isn't broken. It may simply be overwhelmed by noise. So as this video comes to a close, carry this with you. You don't need to do it all at once. Just begin. One quiet, meaningful step at a time. If this message stirred something within you, like it. Share it with someone who's been feeling off track. Tap the bell so you never miss what matters. And most of all, subscribe to join us on this journey where ancient wisdom meets the modern mind. Because the strongest lives are rarely built in loud moments. They're built in the smallest, most consistent acts of self-respect.